Hello, 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 and welcome back to A Little Birdie Told You. I'm your host, Kristen Knight.
And I'm your host, Kelly Knight.
And today we are back with another episode on our miniature series, A Birdie's Broken Heart, and we are going to be talking about how to break up with someone.
Today's quote is, "Relationships are like glass. Sometimes it's better to leave them broken than try to hurt yourself putting it back together."
Now, I want to clarify that breaking up with someone, it seems like it's such a negative thing. I think a lot of people are like, oh, work it out, or you shouldn't break up with someone because you might hurt them in the process. But if you're unhappy and you're miserable in that relationship, or if you are not compatible with that person anymore, I think it's time to break up with them. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. Because, it's not like you're married or anything. If you're not happy with somebody, you have the right to,
When do you think's, the right time? When do you think that you should break up with somebody? In a relationship, say you're in a relationship, right? And, all of a sudden, maybe you lose feelings for that person, or, what are some examples of, reasons to break up with someone?
See, I'm not saying you have to, tell the person if you're losing feelings, but I feel like it is right to, have a lot of communication in a relationship and be, tell them how you're feeling, or, if you're, I think maybe we're better off as friends because, I'm losing, feelings.
See, what I've noticed in our generation is it seems like this doesn't even have to pertain to, relationships, an official relationship, but, an unofficial relationship, a talking stage or, a situationship. People just tend to ghost, and they just completely, they back completely off, and then it makes the other person, they're like, well, what's going on? You know what I'm saying?
And it's hurtful, too.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about somebody who just completely ghosts you, or just, even if you're in a relationship, you can feel them. You know how you feel that space
it's
between
that
the relationship?
Energy, you just feel them drop everything, and you feel like you're the only one putting effort in.
Have you had that experience?
Yeah, I've had that experience, actually, both.
Okay, well,
both ways. Somebody ghosting and another one, but in general, ghosting, I feel like it's really hurtful because it's especially being an overthinker, you start thinking dang, did I do something wrong? Really, no, they might have already had a girlfriend or something, you know what I mean?
Or they just lost interest.
Exactly, but in general, it is really hurtful. If you're gonna think about ghosting somebody, honestly, you really shouldn't. You should just be
in my opinion, I believe it's immature.
Oh yeah, it's really
because
immature.
It lacks accountability. And it's kind of making me perceive you as
you're better off just being honest and being you know direct. What, I don't I just want to even if you don't want to be in a relationship and you're just somebody that just kind of you just kind of want to have fun and just kind of talk to people, there's nothing wrong with that. In general, there's people that are like that. I wouldn't consider those players in general, as long as you communicate to that person hey, I don't know how you feel about me, but in general, I don't want to go any farther than this. I don't mind flirting or whatever, but this is just where I want to stand with this. I'm not going to be any more than that.
Well, yeah, you're direct, and you're making sure that people know what your intentions are. And I think that's why it's important. Someone can lie to you though and say what their intentions are.
So when you're in the talking stage, you honestly that's something that should be clear with both of you is what's your intentions with it? Not being oh yeah, don't sit there and be talking to somebody.
Are we on the same page?
Yeah, are you on the same page? Don't sit there and feel oh yeah, this person's the more masculine one. I'm going to wait for them to say something. No, you could speak your mind. You could say something, you know what I mean? You could be well, what are your intentions with this? Don't just sit there and waste your time with somebody.
And this is comparative to breaking up with someone. That's what we're bringing this in. And if you're somebody and you're considering breaking up with someone.
It's wrong because it's if you're losing feelings for somebody, don't let somebody gain more feelings for you and drag that along because that's really hurtful. Would you want that to be in your shoes? No, probably not. So it's in general, if you're thinking about breaking up with somebody or you're losing feelings, just be honest with the person. It might hurt, but it's honestly going to hurt less if you be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's for instance, somebody breaking up with you and being yeah, I don't want to deal with you anymore. This is just too much on me. I'm just going to drop it all. And then that person's dang, that hurt. But in general, if somebody's more honest with you and was hey, whatever, I have a lot going on with school or sports or work or something, or they just don't feel the same way about you anymore, you're better off just saying the honest truth because it's gonna hurt less and you honestly could probably keep more of a friendship. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that our generation, that's why I said they kind of just play the ghosting game because they don't want to confront those emotions. They don't want to confront the issue. They just want to be
honestly,
yeah, I'm not going to deal with this.
If you're going to be immature and ghost people and stuff or just mess around so much, it's honestly,
shouldn't be in a relationship.
You should not be in a relationship.
You're not mature enough to be in a relationship.
I think I've already said
now,
this
if you want to do that and you don't want to get official with someone, that's different.
There's nothing wrong with talking to, I'm not saying like talking to like a
Yeah,
bunch of different
that's
guys
absolutely
or like
fine.
talking to a bunch of different girls.
Depending on your intentions.
As long as you actually tell that person, like if that person you start noticing that they might have interest in you or they tell you that they're interested in you, don't sit there and be like, oh yeah, like I like you too. And then all of a sudden like, what? Like you're not actually going to get in a relationship with them. Like it's
and this
mean.
is the same thing with breaking up with someone. So we're gonna talk to you about this. We're gonna talk to you about if you want to avoid making someone feel that way, or you're somebody that knows what it's like. You know the feeling of being broken up with, and you're like, I get that feeling, but like I want to make sure that I do this correctly. I'm not telling you that we're correct, but we're gonna tell you a little bit of how to do this. So I think the first step into breaking up with someone is obviously
Really
you have to
think it
consider
through.
it. You have to consider it. So I'm going to tell you this right now, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you as I am with Kelli. When you are considering breaking up with someone, keep in mind the moment that you tell them, I don't want to be with you anymore. I do not want this relationship
It does not
being pursued.
it does not mean you're going to be able to go running back to them.
It does
okay?
not guarantee the fact that A, they could either move on, or B, they might just not want anything to do with you ever again. They might say, well, you walked out of my life and I'm not letting you back in. So keep that in mind. Don't put yourself in a position to lose somebody if you don't want to risk losing them. Keep that in mind. And that's why you need to consider it. Don't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to break up with them because right now in the moment I'm angry with them, or I don't want to be with them anymore because they did something that kind of was a red flag or an ick. We talked about this, but don't ignore the red flags. But if they did something that maybe
like
can
in general,
be
if somebody's going around being like, oh yeah, like I saw your like boyfriend or your girlfriend like talking to somebody like in a flirtatious way, don't sit there and like take people's like
advice or
advice.
opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then just like be like, you know what, I'm just gonna break up with them right now and just kind of like ghost them or whatever you would do. But like in general, like honestly, be mature about it. Don't be immature, because honestly, if you're gonna be immature about it, you should not be in a relationship. Talk to them about it. Be like, hey, did you actually do that? You know, and then actually figure out what you're going to do.
See, the problem with that though is sometimes some people will be honest with you if they've seen them around with other people. Like if you've heard stories about this person cheating, and you maybe, I always trust your gut. Trust your gut.
If you're getting it from like the one specific person though, constantly, they're probably lying. But if you're getting like 3 different friends and like one of them is somebody that like you know like kind of says the truth about people, then you're probably like, that person's like honestly probably doing
Trust
stuff.
your gut. You all have a gut, and I know you all have a gut, right?
Oh my gosh.
But you all do have an intuition. And you know how you sometimes you have those feelings where you're like, I'm just going to let the positives kind of like overshadow the negatives in the case. You're like, yeah, I'm just going to ignore that and ignore the red flags because you really like the person, or there's something about the person that seems like it's more positive than it is negative.
Like you should honestly just pull all the red flags out and be like, okay, like are these things that are like normal in a person? Like sure, somebody might like, I don't know, might not have like good communication or whatever, but I feel like that's something you can fix if you actually tell them.
Yeah, if you communicate
but like
with the
in
person.
general, if they're like somebody that lies a lot, that is like really bad right there. Like do not be lying to people.
Kelli, you like to mention that one that little tactic of where you delete the person's initials.
Oh yeah, hold up, I want to say
that's
that.
That's actually funny. But Kelli, you want to talk about that? That's funny.
Yeah, okay.
It's not really serious. Don't actually do this,
okay,
but
no,
it's kind of funny.
Okay, honestly.
Okay.
I did it once though.
You did it once?
Yeah, I did it once.
You were deleting initials?
Uh-huh.
Was this like an official relationship or like something else?
I don't know. We're not going to talk about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Every time he or she messes up, remove a letter from his or she's name on your phone. When his or her name is gone, y'all are done.
That's
like in general,
funny.
but what I was saying to Kristen about this was I was like, you know what? Not like it's a game, but like if they mess up, you take a letter from their name. Imagine if they only have like a 2-letter name.
Yeah, that might not be a good idea.
But like if they do something good, add a letter back. You know, you got to be a little nice.
I don't
like,
know about that one.
I don't know.
It's funny. It's a funny tactic.
Funny, but
I guess it's a way to motivate you if you're in a situation. If you're in a situation and someone's cheating on you, that's the time to consider breaking up with them. I wouldn't date someone who's cheating on you because I know people like to say people change. You know how people like to say that. But truthfully, I'm going to be honest. A lot of cheaters, and I don't want to go out there and say, if you've cheated on somebody, I'm not like trying to come at you or anything, but I'm going to be honest, it takes a lot for me personally to earn trust. So someone else might look at that and they might be like, oh, I forgive you. Me personally, if you cheated, that's a no. That's never going to happen again. And I'm going to be honest, I do not care how much you changed. I do not care how much you want to convince me you changed. And I know how Kelli is about that. No more second chances. So consider the fact that you might lose this person if you do something like that. When you're getting in a relationship with someone, value the relationship enough to say, I'm not going to do that.
Getting into a relationship, though, I mean, this might be a little off topic, but getting into a relationship, if it's somebody that's like your really close friend, and I feel like a lot of people need to hear this, you might really like your best friend, your best guy friend, or your best like girlfriend. That didn't
Yeah,
sound
your
like,
friend that's a girl.
yeah, exactly. But in general, you kind of want to think that through, because getting in a relationship with someone does not mean you guys are gonna stay friends if you guys break up. Because a lot of the time, like, everybody was always like, oh yeah, like let's stay friends. It gets kind of awkward, to be honest, because people around you start kind of talking, and then like your vibes with each other just kind of like are like, yeah, no, this is just weird, because like the dynamic and stuff changes, like especially if you've dated for a while and you're like used to like being close to that person or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So, like, in general, if you have, like, a really close guy friend and, like, a really close girlfriend that's, like, your best friend and you like them, like, really consider even, like, if you really want to tell them that, or, like, consider going any farther than that, because in general, it might mess up the whole friendship.
So just consider it when you're considering breaking up with someone. And now I know a lot of people tend to ask for advice or support when they're breaking up with someone, because they're like, well, how do you do this? And they don't really know what they're doing, especially if it's your first relationship and you're like, yeah, this we're not compatible anymore. I'm unhappy. If you're unhappy or you're miserable, remember and keep in mind that you only live once. If you're unhappy with somebody, it's okay to break up with them. It's okay to move on. It's okay to change. People change. We're humans, right? So it's not a bad thing to break up with someone. And me and Kelli always look at it, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, right? So you have to look at it as that way and keep that in mind. And don't be unhappy, and don't sit there and like live miserably every day with somebody in this relationship. And sometimes that's hard because people go through that honeymoon phase. And I like to tell Kelli that's like the first 3 months, or that's that little beginning stage of the relationship. And then reality hits, right? And you notice like the actual realness comes in for the relationship. And you're like, yeah, I don't see that. I don't like this anymore.
Said, like, they put effort in at first, and then like the second like they actually get you, they're just like, I'm gonna stop putting effort in.
And this is when those are those types of relationships that are probably not meant to be. That's that's not gonna work out. So you've considered it, right? Now you're like, okay, well, I might get support. Some people want support, some people don't. It depends on it. Me and Kelli have this idea where we don't like going to friends or anything like that. I would not go to somebody that is
a lot of the times, no matter
it.
how real like your friends are, like they're probably not going to give you the best advice.
Don't go and get advice from somebody that hasn't really had the experience. I wouldn't go get advice from people.
You're better off getting advice from somebody that's older and like actually has had experience with things like that, just because they know more what they're talking about, rather than your friend that's been like in 2 talking stages in one relationship,
or like 20 different relationships.
Exactly, that's something bad then.
You know what I mean by that? I would seek advice from somebody you trust, but sometimes you have to watch with your friends because of the fact that sometimes your friends aren't in your best interest, or you might think they are, but really they're actually interested in maybe the person you're seeing or thinking about breaking up with, or vice versa, and they might influence your decision a bit. So I would go to somebody you're brutally honest with if you want advice on how to break up with them, or you think you should break up with them, right? So now you're like, okay, you've considered it. You're like, I'm all right putting myself in a position to lose this person. And if you're unhappy, you're unhappy, and there's nothing you can do about that. When you go to tell this person you want to break up with them, make sure that you tell them you need to talk to them. Do not just randomly drop the news on them, okay? Do not.
Or like in general, I don't know if somebody would do this, but this is just something maybe somebody needs to hear. Don't be like, oh yeah, you want to go get ice cream, and then like plan on breaking up with them.
Yeah,
like,
I wouldn't do that.
Don't do that. Like, be serious and be like, hey, like we need to like talk about something serious. Like the next time we hang out or something, like, just to like give them that warning so they're serious about it and they're like, okay,
well,
like,
because
I know,
if somebody asks you, hey, we need to talk about something, you're most likely going to be like, okay, this is something serious, and you're preparing them for something serious, and they're like, well, like, what, like, do you want to, like, don't ever do it over text. Please do not do it over text.
Okay. In general, if you have to do it over text, I can completely understand
asking somebody to talk to them, that you could do over text, but do not break up with somebody over text.
No, okay. Here's one thing though, is, I mean, this has happened once.
Okay.
But like in general, like there is some people out here that are very like controlling and will not accept the answer no. So like in general, sometimes you have to like do it over text, because like
out of safety,
because that
but
person
also
might
to
be like very
emphasize the boundary between you two. You need to emphasize that boundary.
But like you could still do it over the phone if it came to that point, because you could always end the phone if it got that bad, you know what I'm saying? But like in general, if you've been in a relationship with somebody a very long-term relationship or anything like that, you need to say it in person.
Or if you're in a long-distance relationship and you have to do it over text or over the phone, that's different. But most of the time, gracefully, I would do it in person, just because I think it's a little bit more considerate, and it's a little bit more like you're actually showing some compassion. And So prepare that person for a serious talk. If you're with that person in person and you want to say, hey, we need to
Don't
talk
do
about
it around
something,
like your friends or anything.
do it in
Obviously, make
private.
sure it's like you two alone.
And I would make sure it's a convenient time, not only for you, but for them. Because I tend to notice some people just do what's convenient for them. Or they'll randomly drop the ball on you. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, so like, I want to break up. I just want to be friends.
That's why I think it's really wrong when people break up with you over text, because it's like they don't know what's going on in your life.
They don't know what's going on in your life. It could be your cousin's birthday. It could be your sister's birthday. It could literally, you could have like a something going on that's really important to you. You could be working. You could be doing all kinds of things that are essential to your life, right? And then all of a sudden that person just drops that on you and you're like, wow, you literally just did this to me. So make sure that you actually consider that person's schedule. That's why you should say, hey, like we need to have a serious talk, or we need to talk soon. Like, when's a good time for us to talk? And then they'll give you their answer to that, right? And you can figure it out from there. And I would meet that person in person. If you're dating them, like I would, and you're about to break up with them, I would try to talk to them in person. Don't you agree with that? And like Kelli said, do it in private, or do it in a setting that it's kind of just you two, and don't make them think otherwise. Like, don't give them mixed signals. Like, don't say, oh, we're having a serious talk, and invite them out on a date or something like that. I was saying. Like, don't do that. Or don't say, oh, yeah, like Kelli said, go get ice cream, or let's go do this. Like, actually prepare them. You know what I mean? Like, go somewhere. Like, I'm not saying go somewhere that's going to scare them or anything and make them, like, question, well, what's going on here? But, like, you know, like, sit in a chair, like how me and Kelli are, just, like, sit there and be like, so, like, we need to have a serious talk. And then I would be direct and honest. You don't have to go into all of your emotions and your feelings if you're not comfortable with that. And I wouldn't. I would just be very direct and honest. Say, you know, okay, well, we've been in a relationship for this long and I've enjoyed my memories with you, right? But I think at this time, like, I'm going
unless
this
you
way,
didn't enjoy your memories.
Yeah, unless you didn't. Unless they were very abusive, or the relationship just didn't work out from the start and you're like, I second guessed all of this and you just want to end it. But if everything's going right and you just see yourself going down a different path, then I would be honest with them. You don't have to get too much into it. And if they start asking questions, the problem I have with this is, say somebody's like, well, what did I do wrong? Or why isn't this not working out? I would just honestly, I wouldn't be completely direct, because people try to like sway your decision. And if you've made this decision.
Yeah, because like in general, if you break up with somebody, like a lot of the time you tend to like see like the other person like, oh yeah, like, but like, oh, we can fix that. So
that's
like,
what
can
they'll
we
do.
get back together? Like, if somebody wants to break up with you, let them do their thing, because everything happens for a reason. And obviously you're not the right fit.
And if
for
you're
each
meant
other.
to come back together,
exactly.
you will. And that's what you have to trust. And if you're somebody and someone breaks this news to you and says, I want to break up with you, or they're like, let's just be friends, I think this is going to work out for us this way. You just have to accept the fact, right, Kelli? You have to accept it. You just have to say, okay, that's fine with me. Like, if that's what I would do, I would just accept it. Be accepting of it. Don't sit there and try to fight it.
And like, don't wish them anything bad, obviously. Just be like, okay.
Yeah, don't try to get revenge.
Good for you in the future, you know.
And if they did something bad, karma will find its way to them. And that's the same way if somebody ghosted you, karma will find their way to them, right? So, okay. But what I want to say is, don't sit there and try to find any way to like kind of like give them mixed signals. So don't be like, if they start asking questions, I would just be honest and say, hey, like, you know, what happened in the past, but I don't want to continue to pursue this. And you don't have to answer their questions. And if that's what you officially know that's what you want to do, you don't have to continue anything. You can just say, this is what I want to do.
And a lot of the time, like, I get it, after a breakup, like, people might want to talk to each other, but like Kristen said this at one point for one of my breakups, like, obviously I still wanted to talk to the person, but like Kristen's like, oh, you should like kind of like not like ghost them for a month.
Not
like,
ghost.
Like no contact for a month.
Contact.
And honestly, like I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But like now that it's like I'm more mature and stuff, I'm like, honestly, like you honestly shouldn't have contact with a person for like a month or two.
And the reason why I say this is because when you break up with somebody, you're severing ties from them. And usually, yes, you can have a friendship with that person, right? And I know I'm not saying like destroy your friendship, but it takes a hot minute to get over that person, especially if you still have feelings for that person. It's not like, oh yeah, we're breaking up and like, you don't have feelings. You know?
Like try to be friends with somebody again. Like in general, if you guys broke up or whatever, like don't
give it a couple months.
Yeah, give it a couple months. Like don't be like running back to try to like build a friendship with them if you still have feelings with them, because that's not a good dynamic.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. Like basically no contact for 3 months, no communication. Because when you do that, it not only allows you to get over it or that person to get over it, but that way if you do decide to be friends again, you have that time away from each other that you can establish a friendship again.
Exactly,
if you choose
like
to.
a new fresh start.
And you won't have those feelings still there. So that tension won't be there, and that, resistance to like, still pursue a relationship, you'll be able to figure out what you want. Sometimes people realize they still want to be together at that point. So what I would do is go just no communication. And not only that, is if someone wants to exit your life, let them exit your life. Do not place any resistance on that. Don't say, oh, please come back. No. Walk out the door. It's okay. That's the end. That's the end of the chapter for you in my story, right? That's the way you have to look at it. And okay, so now you broke the news to them, right? You broke the news. You're like, okay, we're breaking up. Don't say it like that, but be direct, be honest. You don't have to get all emotional. It depends on the person as well. I think if it's somebody who's very sensitive, try to comfort them, because you do want to be empathetic. I'm not going to sit there like, yeah, I'm going to look at you like, I want to break up with you, and walk out the door, walk out wherever I am with them, right? You need to look at them if they're sensitive. There's some people that are very sensitive and emotional, and I would try to comfort them a little bit, because that might be the last time you're doing that. And, when you break up with someone, you're not responsible for their emotions. You're not responsible for anyone's emotions. And you just have to be honest and sincere. Please be honest. Just be direct. Be direct with what you want. Say, I don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to pursue this. Just be direct, because I think that's the most mature thing you can do. And it allows that person to kind of understand where you're coming from. You don't have to say why you want to break up. I mean, I don't think you do you think you should? Do you think that's essential to breaking up with someone?
I mean, it's kind of hard when people start getting all questioning after a breakup.
That's my problem.
You don't have to answer the questions.
If it's mutual, though, it's different.
Yeah, but like in general, you're not required to answer any questions somebody's asking you if you don't feel comfortable answering them.
Yeah, and the problem I have with that is, like you said, people can influence your decision or sway. Oh, we can work this out.
But see, if they're a person like that, you don't. I'm not saying it's like required to like be like, oh yeah, like you have to go in person, because it's like sometimes that is
That's
hard.
why Kelly said you could do
like,
it over the phone.
If there's somebody that's like that, like I feel like you can tell.
But
like,
don't do it over text.
Yeah, but like in general, if there's somebody that likes to try to like sway like your like answer like a different way to try to get you to say yes, like we'll stay together, like.
And another thing is, okay, so now like say that happened, right? And then you don't have to answer people's questions. Just say, I would implement those boundaries. So you, as the person breaking up with someone, if you break up with someone, do not contact them. Do not give them mixed signals. Do not sit there the next day, oh yeah, I break up with them, and then say, hi, let's hang out. Don't do that. If you made your decision, why are you going to give them mixed signals? Because that's going to give that person mixed signals into thinking this relationship still might be able to like be pursued, right? You don't want to do that. If you're done with that person and you're like, I don't want to be with them in a relationship anymore, that's why I said I would always go no contact for like a couple months, a couple weeks, because it gives that person space away from you where they realize there's a boundary there. And if you're able to be friends with that person, that's different.
And like I know a lot of people always want to block like their ex or whatever.
I don't know if I would do that.
It's kind of immature, to be honest, but like in general,
unless there's like
if they're like very toxic or whatever, and they're not like, you feel very uncomfortable like with them like having like your number, like any of your social medias, that's different. But like don't be like, oh my gosh, like that person broke up with me, let me like block them. Like it's really immature if you're gonna do that.
I agree with that. And then after that, I feel like that's kind of how you have to end it. You just have to be honest. I would go into it being honest.
And especially after a breakup, like I know a lot of people like with the whole blocking and stuff, but like in general, if you see them in person, like don't like ignore them if they're like saying hi or something.
Be neutral. That's how we like to say
like
it. Be
I'm
neutral.
like just be neutral in general.
Like you don't have to be friendly,
but like don't be giving
mean.
people dirty looks.
Just be neutral.
Like what is wrong with you?
Like an acquaintance, some sort. Like, you know how you see people and you're just like, I'm neutral. Like I don't like them, but I don't hate them. I'm just neutral. Just be neutral. And it might take time, and whatever happens is what happens, right? So you break up with them, and if they're somebody that's crazy, I'm not saying crazy, I don't mean to be mean, but like if there's somebody who's very emotional and, like I said, comfort them if that's what you choose to do. I'm not telling you what you have to do. If you don't want to comfort them and you're like, I don't want anything to do with this, and that's why I know some people want to do it over the phone. Don't do it over text, because not only this is not only the reason why I'm telling you not to do it over text. The reason why I'm telling you not to do it over text, not only is it inconsiderate, but it doesn't allow that person to feel your emotions and understand where you're coming from.
Sometimes the things you say, like somebody might take it a different way. You're better off just saying it with your own voice and like actually saying it
so they can understand where you're coming from. That's what I mean.
Because if somebody sends you a text, you're like, do they mean it that way or this way?
Yeah, mixed signals.
Like you're kind of confused, and then like if you say it in a way like that you're meaning it like, I'm not going to get back together with you, they might be like, oh, okay, so like maybe one day we'll get back together.
Yeah, that's why
like you're better off just saying it with your own voice and being like straight up about it.
If you have to do it virtually, do it either over a call or something like that where they can hear your voice, because your tone of your voice is going to express how you feel. So if you're being very direct and honest and saying this is over for me, they're going to be able to notice that. And then set those boundaries. After you broke up with the person, set your boundaries, and I would focus on yourself and allow that person to focus on themselves as well, and just kind of go your own way, sever ties from them. And if that's the decision you decide to make, and if you need support from other people, then you go to people you trust. I always tell Kelly, like, go to people that are brutally honest with you, because maybe in the moment it hurts, but you also know they care. That's why I'm brutally honest, because I care. Like, Kelly gets mad at me for being brutally honest because she's like,
I mean,
well, that
sometimes
hurts.
you want somebody that kind of like, what is it, like,
Sugarcoats
it. But like in general, you're better off getting the brutal, honest truth and not like sitting there and being like, oh, like, you know.
Well, because then you don't understand if it's actually truthful or not. You're like, like, if I'm being brutally honest, I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm doing it because I care.
If somebody's like sugarcoating it, they're probably not the best person to get advice from. I'm gonna be honest. You need somebody that's gonna be brutally honest with you.
And sometimes the breaking up with someone's not easy for either. It's not easy for either sides, right? And I think a lot of people, they tend to, have more empathy for the person and sympathy for the person that went through it, but both people had to go through things. And especially if you're the one that broke up with somebody because you did have this burden on your shoulders. But if you do it in a way that's not graceful and kind of inconsiderate, like I said, like over text, or you did it in front of their friends, or you did it in a way that made them feel bad about themselves, then that's not very nice. So that's why I would really consider the way you do it and the approach you do it. Just consider it, because you already are aware. They might not be aware of what you're about to do. And sometimes I feel like you kind of have an inner knowing, because it's like you can feel the distance, but some people don't, so it's different for everybody. Some people might think everything's fine and they might be completely fine with you, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day they're like, yeah, I want to break up with you, I don't want to be with you anymore, like, this isn't working for me. And you're like, well, where did that come from? So that's why I would kind of consider the way you do it and your approach to it. And I think after that, it's time for you to kind of just focus on yourself. Do you agree? I would just do your own thing. I wouldn't have any bad blood with the person. I'd be neutral. And if
just be like, that was in the past, we're going to move on with the person.
And if their actions and their personality is someone who may be a little bit controlling or over possessive or jealous, then you just kind of have to steer clear from them. If you have to put yourself in a position where you have to block them or some sort, then I guess you have to do that. But if they're a person that's just pretty neutral and they're okay, and they're, maybe they're emotional a little bit, but they're kind of doing their own thing, you just let them do that. And I think that's how you break up with someone. I think that's how you break up with someone. I just want to put that in there, is if you're making the decision to break up with somebody,
really
just make sure you really consider it. And don't feel bad or have any, like, don't say, oh yeah, people are going to hate me. People might look at you and they'd be like, why'd you do that? But they don't know what was going on in that relationship, right? No one knows what's going on in a relationship between two people. And you have to understand that.